Chapter 754, Open, Kill. From the Operations Command Center, when they saw Zhang Yi seal Phoenix Ren in his space, they immediately erupted in cheers that had long been suppressed. Yay! Awesome, Phoenix Ren is trapped, he'll die in Zhang Yi's space, right? Error. I'm not sure. But the records have never shown Zhang Yi killing someone using a different space. Zhu Jing frowned, his eyes fixed on the battlefield in Tianhai City. The situation in the other two battlefields was now very clear. The Yakuza demon organization that Tu Yunlai was dealing with was not strong enough to pose a threat to them. And the reincarnation squad was already on the plane to Tianhai City. Next, it was only necessary to delay long enough for the reincarnation squad to join the battlefield. Zhu Jing stared at the screen, mumbling, Zhang Yi, you must hold on. Zhang Yi temporarily sealed Phoenix Ren at the cost of temporarily sacrificing his spatial ability. Phoenix Ren could not be killed, even in a different space. And with his ability of the fire of karma, sooner or later he would break through the seal of space. By then, Zhang Yi would be completely unable to use the ability of a different space for a short period of time. But for now, at least for now, he was the only captain-level alien on the entire battlefield. Open, kill. It was difficult for Zhang Yi to kill Phoenix Ren, but it was much easier for him to kill a lower-ranked alien. The first target he set his sights on was naturally the second-in-command of the Eclipse Moon organization, Jinguji Saikairo. At that moment, Jinguji Saikairo was leading his subordinates in a surprise attack on the members of the Tengu squad. But the next moment, he sensed a terrifying murderous intent closing in on him. Jinguji Saikairo looked up in horror and saw Zhang Yi staring at him from the air. In Zhang Yi's right hand, a ball of unstable dark matter was slowly coalescing. Jinguji Saikairo's pupils constricted. He knew only too well the terrifying power of that move. Even Kanuta had been seriously injured by it. If he took the physical body of that move, he would definitely die. Escape! Jinguji Saikairo did not hesitate to summon the bluebird, then jumped onto its back and began to fly away. However, Zhang Yi of course would not let him go. A spear of void condensed in his palm, while his eyes locked onto Jinguji Saikairo's position. Zhang Yi used a flying device to chase after him. The two were like two meteors speeding past each other in the sky. No matter how fast the bluebird was, it could not match the speed of Deng's flying device. When the two reached the same speed, Jinguji Saikairo appeared to be almost motionless in Zhang Yi's eyes. Jinguji Saikairo sensed Zhang Yi's approach and immediately began to fly in an arc. But for Zhang Yi, none of this mattered anymore. The Void Spear was not a single target attack, but a skill that dealt AoE damage over a wide area. He raised the Void Spear in the air, pointed it in the direction of Jinguji Saikairo, and hurled it with all his strength. The attack instantly enveloped a sphere with a radius of 500 meters, covering the area where Jinguji Saikairo had fled. All warriors are arrayed in battle. Jinguji Saikairo's eyes were bloodshot, and the threat of death completely engulfed him. He hurriedly summoned all his Shikigami to block in front of him and simultaneously activated his protective barrier. But in the face of this Void Spear technique, his proud Shikigami and barrier shattered. They were not on the same level, the gap was too obvious. In the blink of an eye, all his defenses disappeared, and his body was also disintegrated by the power of the void into withered fragments, flesh and blood exploding. Zhang Yi took out the supernatural food to replenish his depleted supernatural energy. He couldn't help but sigh in regret. It was a waste not to be able to collect the source of such a powerful otherworldly being. But right now, there wasn't much time left for him, and he had to clear the entire battlefield before Phoenix Ren broke through his spatial seal. Just then, Zhang Yi suddenly sensed a strange change happening in the distance at Knut's location. He looked back and was shocked to see a scene that surprised him. The giant blue shark that Kanuta had transformed into was prostrate at Yang Xinxin's feet, full of humility. In particular, there was an expression of extreme adoration in those huge shark eyes. Zhang Yi's mouth curled up into a smile. He knew that Yang Xinxin's ability had worked. The ability that Yang Xinxin had obtained was called Angel of Lust, and it was a trait system. The 3 types of arrows had different abilities. Blue, the arrow of retribution, was mainly for killing. Red, the arrow of lust, had no form and could not be defended against, as it struck straight at the heart. Anyone struck by the arrow of lust would fall in love with the caster from the bottom of their heart. It was an instinct that came from the heart, and even if they knew they had been targeted, they could not help but fall in love. Then, it was all down to the caster's efforts. The 3rd type, the arrow of hatred, is imbued with hatred by the caster. The person who is struck by it will develop extreme hatred for the designated target. Love wants to live, hatred wants to die. The arrow of love makes it a slave, willing to die itself to protect the life of the loved one. The arrow of hatred makes it strive for evil thoughts, and will kill the designated target at all costs. Yang Xinxin's ability was the ability to manipulate people's hearts and minds. This ability had extremely high upper and lower limits. Once she succeeded, even the most powerful aliens would be driven by her. However, the attack power of the arrow of retribution was not strong, and the speed of the arrows of love and hate was only equivalent to that of ordinary bullets. Therefore, in combat, the biggest problem was how to hit the opponent. Yang Xinxin had been looking for a suitable opponent. Facing her arrow of lust, Kido Sang chose to block rather than dodge, which gave her the opportunity to hit. Then, taking advantage of Kido Sang, she attacked the seriously injured Kanuta from behind. Kido Sang's chain was a pirate chain. They were on the sea, and they could hijack huge cargo ships with just a charge boat. The chains that bound the cargo ship's fences were extremely difficult to untie. Once Kido Sang's chains hit, there was no escape unless the caster died, and the chains would remain in place, unable to be removed. After Kanuta was controlled by Kido Sang, Yang Xinxin's arrow of love and lust easily pierced his skull. Then she turned the great pirate into her slave. With 2 troublesome opponents dealt with, Zhang Yi dared not be the least bit negligent. He must eliminate all the trouble before Phoenixren gets away. He could feel at that moment that within his other world, Phoenixren was repeating an endless cycle, repeatedly crossing the boundary between life and death. And that red supernatural toxin, the red lotus fire, was also spreading like red ink dripped into water. Once this infection reached a certain limit, Zhang Yi's other world would collapse. Once this collapse occurs, Zhang Yi will not be able to open the alternate space again for 24 hours. In other words, after Phoenixren escapes, it will be dangerous for Zhang Yi to face him again. Therefore, he must kill all his opponents from the outside world, so that the members of the entire Tengu squad can free their hands and work together to deal with Phoenixren. Chapter 755, You're Really Hard to Kill. After Zhang Yi had killed Jinguji Saikairo in seconds, he looked into the distance at the 2 separate battlefields. The battle between Bai Li Changqing and Daiko Yanjin was violent and bloody. These 2 masters of hand-to-hand combat from the 2 major power systems were fighting to the death in close combat. After taking Compound 5, Bai Li Changqing's strength had increased tremendously, allowing him to suppress Daiko Yanjin and keep him on the defensive. However, Daiko Yanjin's defensive power was also astonishing. Although he was being beaten up very badly, there were no fatal injuries. Even after being slashed by the halberd, there was only a layer of greasy fat, and there was no scene of blood vessels bursting. If they continued fighting like this, even if Bai Li Changqing could win this battle, he would also risk his life due to overdrawing his strength. Zhang Yi took out his surprisingly large sniper rifle, the Thunder Strike, and locked onto Daiko Yanjin, who was several kilometers away. Daiko Yanjin was already on the brink of life and death, and at this moment, a frantic warning sounded in his mind, as if there was a sign of death. Escape! His mind was filled with only one thought at the moment, and that was that he must escape, or he would definitely die. However, Bai Li Changqing would not give him that chance at all. Bai Li Changqing, his body burning with red blood, swung the halberd in his hands, and his face was already hideous like a demon due to the effects of the drugs. He attacked frantically in the front, not giving Daiko Yanjin the slightest chance to catch his breath. and Zhang Yi's thunder strike had already locked onto his vitals. Boom! The thunderous punishment roared with a shocking sound. From several kilometers away, a silver bullet wrapped in an incredibly powerful spatial force arrived in an instant. Daiko Yanjin's face instantly turned pale, and then came a heart-wrenching howl. The sound was so loud that everyone, even those several kilometers away, could hear it clearly. They didn't know what had happened that could make that powerful Nico Yokozuna scream like that. Only the people there understood what had happened. Baili Changqing looked at Daiko Yanjin's bloody lower body and couldn't help but stare in shock, while subconsciously covering it with one hand. This kind of pain, as long as you're a man, you can deeply understand. Zhang Yi stood in the air and said coldly, "No matter how strong the defense is, you can't exercise it to that area, can you?" Baili Changqing was momentarily taken aback, but as a veteran soldier, he would not let go of such a good opportunity. He rushed to Daiko Yanjin's body with his halberd, and then the huge blade swung down with all the force of a thunderbolt. Pooh! The blade cut across his fat neck, sinking in deep, without severing his head. A large pool of white grease mixed with blood spilled out. Daiko Yanjin was not instantly killed even though he was cut in the neck. Instead, he used his muscles to clamp down on the halberd blade with all his might, then pushed the halberd away with all his strength and started to run for his life. "He's so hard to kill." Zhang Yi frowned and said. This type of foreigner who focuses on cultivating the body has an incredibly impressive defensive power after reaching a high level, and it is extremely difficult to kill. However, he quickly and decisively changed the bullet and aimed again. Bang! This shot was aimed at his kneecap. With one shot, a large hole was blown directly in his kneecap, and he fell to the ground in a disheveled manner. Baili Changqing chased after him, like an unyielding pig butcher, hunting down a dying domestic pig. "Die for me!" He leapt up, holding the halberd in both hands, and drove it into Daiko Yanjin's back. Pfft! The halberd sank into Daiko Yanjin's body. But he was still struggling. When a person is fighting for their life, their strength becomes infinite, and it almost toppled Baili Changqing over. Zhang Yi quickly reloaded his gun from a distance and shot him in the other leg. Daiko Yanjin's legs were broken and his body was covered in wounds, but with his indomitable will, he supported himself with his hands and ran away. "Team leader, where are you? Why didn't you come help me?" Daiko Yanjin roared. Zhang Yi's appearance made a fight that still had a chance of turning the tables completely hopeless. "A quick fight, I can't hold Phoenix Run for long," Zhang Yi reminded Baili Changqing. He already sensed that his own different space would not last long. Baili Changqing was getting a little anxious at this point. This fat guy, why is he so hard to kill? Just as he was struggling, suddenly, he looked at Daiko Yanjin, who was lying on the ground, and a flash of inspiration came to him. He made up his mind instantly, clenched his hands around the halberd, and charged after Daiko Yanjin like lightning. The halberd was like a gust of wind, the tip gleaming faintly. After catching up to Daiko Yanjin, he thrust the halberd from behind into Daiko Yanjin's body. As the old saying goes, no matter how strong a man is, his insides are still soft. The halberd plunged from the outside in, sinking deep into Daiko Yanjin's body. The halberd head was no longer visible, and the shaft had sunk more than half a meter. Baili Changqing had used all his strength, and he picked him up like a skewer. Daiko Yanjin let out a miserable scream, and he struggled in the air twice, unwilling and desperate. His vitality was particularly tenacious, and even after being pierced like this, he was still not dead. Baili Changqing stabbed him again and again according to the holes in his body. A person has 7 orifices, and they were all stabbed to pieces. After being tortured hundreds of times, Daiko Yanjin finally lost the breath of life. Baili Changqing gasped for breath, thinking to himself, Zhang Yi's set of moves was indeed useful. He thrust the halberd into the ground with all his strength. Daiko Yanjin's dead dog-like body hung from it, and blood flowed down the flagpole, soaking a large area of snow. On the other side, Yang Xinxin pondered Zhang Yi's words in her mind. She realized that although the current battle situation was favorable to them, the situation was not completely in their favor. Once Phoenix Run escaped, they would have to fight a captain-level character without Zhang Yi's ability to travel to different spaces. We have to find that witch. She knew very well that a large part of Phoenix Ren's strength came from the power of the witch. Meng Xiu walked over and said, "Leave this to me." She activated her domain. With her as the center, she could detect all movements within a 3-kilometer radius. Very soon, she found where Mayumi Takeuchi was hiding. She pointed to a distance away, towards a container area in Yuhai Port. She and an Eclipse alien are hiding there. Let me go get her. I'll help you. Shui Miao and Yi volunteered to go get the person. As assassination-type aliens, they were most adept at handling this kind of situation. Zhang Yi felt the collapsing alien space and turned his gaze to the last battlefield. Lian Yu and Tsukamoto Nobunaga's decisive battle. Chapter 756, The Master is Behind. Lian Yu and Tsukamoto Nobunaga's duel was even more dangerous. In terms of defensive capabilities, they were inferior to the meat tank types by Li Changqing and Daiko Yanjin. So if they get hit by a knife, they will be disabled in the least case, and in the worst case, they will lose their lives. After trading an arm for an arm, the two of them had a clear understanding of each other's strength, and neither dared to be the least bit careless. In the next battles were all fought in the blink of an eye. In order to win, they had to cast aside their fear and even their lives in order to have the slightest chance. Zhang Yi subconsciously raised the thunder strike in his hand, but he hesitated and didn't shoot. This was a duel between warriors. Zhang Yi didn't have any so-called noble sentiments, so naturally he didn't care about fairness. But for Lian Yu, she did care. If Zhang Yi shot Nobunaga in the back, it would indeed create an excellent opportunity for Lian Yu. But for Lian Yu, that might form a mental demon that would strike at the dignity of a warrior in her heart. However, now, Zhang Yi could not afford to miss this opportunity. So a moment later, the corner of his mouth rose slightly, and he came up with an excellent idea. He didn't shoot, but activated the ability, locking onto Nobunaga's back of the head. How does it feel to have a master staring at you from behind? Being targeted by a captain-level figure was a feeling that was enough to make anyone's mind shake and become uneasy. Not to mention a powerful warrior like Nobunaga, whose intuition was even keener, so the moment the gun was pointed at the back of his head, he noticed it. No one can remain calm in such a situation. His momentary distraction was instantly seized by Lian Yu. A martial arts master competes with one move, and any mistake can determine victory or death. Lian Yu's knife was fast, like a gust of wind sweeping across a snowfield, fleeting. Her knife was fast and fierce. Nobunaga's knife was also fast, but his mind was in turmoil. Even though he blocked Lian Yu's blade with his own, his momentum was nowhere near as confident and powerful as before. Kachuk! Lian Yu took the opportunity to unleash her full strength, holding Longming in both hands and slashing down at Nobunaga's body. The two famous swords, Daihanya Longlight and Ngang Boyslayer, shattered under the force of the blow. Pooh! Longming's sword cut from his left shoulder to his right abdomen, and blood spurted from his strong body. Nobunaga couldn't believe what he was seeing. He could even hear the sound of the blood splashing, like the wind in his hometown. Plop! He slowly fell to his knees, and Lian Yu passed by him, swinging his sword back and slashing off his head. Looking at the two famous swords he was so proud of, Lian Yu said coldly, "The so-called ancient famous swords have long since become outdated. People who are obsessed with history and fail to look up and see the path ahead of them cannot be called masters." There was a burst of cheers in the operations command center. How could the Tengu squad not be excited after killing off members of Eclipse Moon one after the other? Next, there is only their team leader left. Zhu Jing said in a deep voice, "Kill him, and this mission will be over." Secretary Lan Xinchen came over and praised, "Zhu Jing has a discerning eye and has discovered this talent in Zhang Yi." Zhu Jing nodded with a smile, "I didn't expect it either." After this kid was pushed to the brink, he suddenly exploded with such amazing power. he is completely at the level of a captain. And he is an outsider from the outer city, his talent is unimaginable. Sun Luxuan, however, reminded him, but Phoenix Rin is not dead yet. According to our intelligence, Zhang Yi's other world cannot hold excess energy. It's going to be difficult to trap a captain-level person. If he manages to escape, it will be very dangerous. Zhu Zheng's smile faded from his face. He crossed his arms under his chin. First believe, then question. I believe Zhang Yi has definitely made the right arrangements. The situation of the battle in Tianhai City was also transmitted in real time to Tu Yunlai and Gao Changkong. Tu Yunlai, codenamed Zhurong, was shocked when he heard the news. Zhang Yi, is this guy that strong? After saying this, he turned around and silently looked at the leader of the demon sect. This Ronin organization from the surrounding islands of Neon could not be underestimated. In particular, their three leaders, Yamada Hanyuji, Ebona Kawazawa, and Noya Ryota, all had the strength of upper-level Delta aliens. I need to speed up too. As for the reincarnation squad, after Gao Changkong heard the intelligence from Blizzard City, he was surprised, and a smile of admiration appeared on his face. It's really unexpectedly strong, Zhang Yi. At the battlefield in Tianhai City, Zhang Yi silently put away the thunder strike, then pretended nothing had happened and shouted into the communication device, "Everyone, gather." Zhang Yi came to the middle of the Tengu squad members. Everyone's faces were filled with joyful smiles, they all believed that the victory was already set, and they sincerely admired Zhang Yi, who had descended from the heavens. However, Zhang Yi said coldly, the real battle has just begun. I can't hold back Phoenix Rin anymore, so get ready. After Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing arrived at the scene, Zhang Yi did not hesitate and directly opened the different space, then released Phoenix Rin, who had been imprisoned by him for a few minutes. He himself then used space travel to instantly leave the battlefield. His different space was on the verge of collapse, so instead of waiting for Phoenix Rin to completely destroy it, he might as well release him early. Zhang Yi decided to leave the rest of the battle to others. He knew full well that the person Phoenix Rin wanted to kill was him, and he had to run far away. Phoenix Rin appeared surrounded by the Tengu squad. He was naked, with a muscular body covered in defined lines. But at the moment, his eyes were full of confusion. The time flow rate in the alternate space was completely different from reality. Although from the outside, it appeared that he had been trapped in time for only a few minutes, but in that world, the mental time he experienced was decades long. He was in a world where his body could barely move, but his thoughts were still as normal as ever. It was an unimaginable torture, the cruelest mental prison in the world. For decades, it was the same white space in front of his eyes. Over the decades, Phoenix Rin had forgotten many things. However, his willpower was extraordinary after all. The process of adapting to the flames of the phoenix had made him experience death thousands of times, and had long since tempered his will into steel. I am Phoenix Rin, leader of the Eclipse Moon. I will take the central plains of the kingdom of Huaxiu, and obtain fertile land for the survival of the landing party. Confusion gradually faded from his eyes. I want to kill a man named Zhang Yi. Phoenix Ren's consciousness gradually returned to the present, which was already decades ago for him. He had forgotten a lot, but he had not forgotten what he had to do. Kill him! Bai Li Changqing roared, leading the charge. Liang Yu followed closely behind, brandishing a long knife. Next to Yang Xinxin, a huge blue shark floated on the ground, its eyes full of love and admiration for her. Go, Kanuta, kill him! Yang Xinxin ordered. Yes, Xinxin. You are my light of hope, my fire of desire, my original sin, and my soul. For you, I can give everything, including my life, Kanuta said piously. P.S. Please support the author by clicking a little on your free little gift, as the daily income has been falling recently and I've lost my motivation. Chapter 757, The Angel of Desire. Kanuta excitedly rushed towards Phoenix Rin. As long as Yang Xinxin asked him to do something, he was overjoyed. He didn't even have the resolve to die for the woman he loved, so why would he say he loved her? Yang Xinxin's face showed signs of disgust. But that was just her ability, and there was nothing she could do about it, so she could only adapt. By Li Changqing, Liang Yu, and Kanuda, the 3 deputy team leaders, surrounded Phoenix Ren to kill him. The others were loitering around, and even if they wanted to help, the difference in levels was too great, and the power they could exert was limited. And at this time, what was Zhang Yi, the team leader, doing? He leaned against the back of an abandoned container and silently took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. In the next battle, the power he could exert would be limited. Because the different space was on the verge of collapse at this time, he could no longer fight Phoenix Ren on the front battlefield. He had to leave, otherwise Phoenix Ren would do whatever it took to kill him. And there were still several people next to him. Uncle Yu, Fatty Su, and Xiao Honglian. The previous pirate squad had been wiped out by them. However, in doing so, the remaining combat power of Tianhai City had been weakened a little more, and the combat power of the base had suffered a lot of casualties. Xiao Honglian looked at the Jinwan in Zhang Yi's hand and reached out to Zhang Yi. "Give me one." Zhang Yi glanced at her and tossed her a stick. A few men and a woman, somewhat tired, took a short break on the battlefield. "You're leaving, can they handle it?" Xiao Honglian asked, exhaling a wisp of white smoke from her bright red lips. "He escaped from my other world, which also required a huge expenditure of energy," Zhang Yi said indifferently. In just over 10 minutes, Phoenix Ren had experienced an unknown number of deaths. And each time he died, it drained his essence. Even though he had almost collapsed Zhang Yi's other world, he was no longer in peak condition. By Li Changqing and the others joining forces to deal with him should be fine, Zhang Yi said. But as soon as he finished speaking, a deafening roar sounded behind him. Bang! A huge shadow appeared above the heads of the several people, and then a huge object crashed heavily not far from them. It was the body of Kanuda. The huge blue shark incarnation smashed into the ground, creating a terrifying deep pit. Ice and snow flew in all directions, splashing everyone. Xing Tian couldn't help but say, "It seems that the situation is not as optimistic as it seems." Zhang Yi took a deep breath, dusted the dirt off his body, and carefully looked through the container to check the battle situation. In the middle of the battlefield, a raging storm was gathering. He saw a figure in red shuttling through the battlefield like a phoenix. "This is bad." Zhang Yi took a deep breath, his heart rising again. Although he had significantly weakened the power of Phoenix Ren, it did not mean that Liang Yu and the other 2 could defeat him. The 3 of them also had serious injuries. In the middle of the battlefield, Phoenix Ren was laughing maniacally. His team was gone, almost everyone had died in battle, so he wanted to kill every member of the Tengu squad. "I haven't lost yet. As long as I'm alive, I can start over again. Eclipse Moon will never perish." Phoenix Ren's body was burning with a crimson flame, an inferno of karma that even aliens dared not touch. Once infected, it was as hard to dispel as maggots in the bones, and could only be countered by expending one's supernatural powers. Bai Li Changqing and Liang Yu had fought until they were insane. They knew they couldn't retreat, this was their final battle. And the outcomes of the battles in the other several battlefields were also being watched here. Zhang Yi looked at the mad Phoenix Ren and subconsciously wanted to take out his Thunder Stun and shoot him. But when he thought that Phoenix Ren definitely hated him the most, he dismissed the idea. "Even if I kill him, what's the point? He can still resurrect. I still have to find a chance to seal him up." Zhang Yi checked the time. 37 minutes had passed since the battle began. And the support that Gao Changkong had promised had not arrived. "He wants me to die, and then come and pick up the pieces, right?" A sneer appeared at the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. Gao Changkong, who appeared to be the perfect person, was from a poor background and had a perfect personality. But he had never trusted such a character. Because no one was perfect. If there really was, they must be in disguise. And a character who can always pretend to be perfect must be even more ruthless than ordinary people. Blizzard City wants to use me to contain him, and he doesn't want me to die, so Blizzard City has to take the credit for destroying Eclipse Moon. After all, Blizzard City needs a monument to become an idol in people's hearts. Zhang Yi abandoned the plan to wait for reinforcements. He said to the intelligence system, "Reconnect to Blizzard City." Roger that. The communication channel was reconnected. Zhang Yi didn't trust headquarters, as there might still be undercover agents there. However, if others weren't letting him have an easy time, he wasn't going to let others have an easy time either. The reincarnation squad didn't arrive at the scheduled time, so there's something wrong with Gao Changkong. He might be Eclipse Moon's undercover agent. Zhang Yi called Gao Changkong by his name, not his code name. Upon hearing Zhang Yi's words, Zhu Zheng's eyes widened. "You mean, Gao Changkong, the leader of our investigation team, was an undercover for Eclipse Moon?" His eyebrows knitted together. This news sounded too unbelievable. What was the identity of the leader of the investigation team? In Blizzard City, he was second only to a few high-ranking officials. And Eclipse Moon was just a small Ronin organization in Neon. What reason did he have to betray them? Zhang Yi calmly said, "The iron rule of the investigation team is the concept of time. There was only one reason for being so late after the agreed half an hour. They were in collusion with Eclipse Moon and hoped we would die." Zhang Yi was not sure if Gao Changkong had really betrayed them. It was only a guess. But one thing was certain, Gao Changkong hoped Zhang Yi would die. So he did not mind throwing the dirty water on Gao Changkong. Zhu Jing said calmly, "We will investigate. I will contact the reincarnation squad immediately." Zhang Yi, now the enemy only has one remaining enemy, Phoenix Ren. As long as he is killed, the mission will be completed. Remember, at all costs. Zhang Yi closed the communication, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. At all costs, at anyone's cost? It won't be mine anyway. Phoenix Ren searched the battlefield for Zhang Yi's figure. He knew he had to kill Zhang Yi. However, there were too many members of the Tengu squad around, and Zhang Yi had disappeared without a trace. Die, 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 all of you. Phoenix Ren moved through the battlefield. He was too fast and too powerful. The earth turned black wherever the red phoenix flames swept. Hiss. A hand knife slashed past, and the sniper Qi Guangming's body was cut in half. Nasty fly. He laughed maniacally and charged at the defenseless Meng Xiu again. Meng Xiu's face suddenly turned pale. At the critical moment, Kanuta returned to the battlefield and forcibly blocked his punch. However, a huge hole was smashed in his body, and the flames of the phoenix burned his flesh, causing him to wail in pain. Chapter 758, The Beast is Out of the Cage. Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing were panting heavily. Liang Yu had lost the use of one arm, and could only hold the knife in his left hand, so his combat effectiveness was less than half of his peak. Bai Li Changqing had forcibly enhanced his strength with drugs, and his body was also collapsing at this time. If they continued to fight, it wouldn't be long before the drugs backfired, and he would die without Phoenix Ren having to make a move. As for the other members of the Tengu squad, they were even worse off. Even now, Phoenix Ren could kill them as easily as killing chickens. The speed, the power, and the ability to ignore their special abilities with the Red Lotus Flame made them deeply feel the terrifying power of a captain-level combatant. Pfft. Lu Winghao was also dead, and it was a very sudden death. He didn't even manage to catch a glimpse of Phoenix Ren's figure before the world in front of his eyes lost its luster. Zhang Yi, get the hell out here. Phoenix Ren roared from the center of the battlefield. Zhang Yi heard him clearly from a distance away, and frowned, but did not rush out. If I go out now, it'll only be me who dies. Zhang Yi had to keep a sufficient distance away from him. Did you find the Miko? He asked the team members. We've already found her, Captain. Yi He and Xuemiao stood in front of the corpse of Wu Ji in the 40th field, looking at Takeuchi Mayumi, who was shivering in the corner of the container, and a sneer appeared at the corner of their mouths. Do you want to kill her? As long as Takeuchi Mayumi was killed, Phoenix Ren would lose the foresight given by. His combat effectiveness would be greatly reduced, and the Tengu squad would have a chance of victory. Zhang Yi sighed, catch her alive, don't let her die. Yi nodded, understood, Captain. He walked up to the woman who had caused the destruction of the Tengu squad, and his eyes were full of hatred as he looked down at her. He slammed a fist into Mayu Takeuchi's stomach, and she convulsed like a shrimp, spitting out a large glob of stomach fluid. Damn neon bitch! Yi cursed, then shoved a gun in her mouth to prevent her from committing suicide. Soon after, Yi and Xue Miao captured Takeuchi Mayumi. Yang Xinxin was also brought by Huapa to Zhang Yi's side. Captain, what should we do with her? Yi asked, staring at Takeuchi Mayumi. She was like a torn sack and was thrown directly to the ground. No, I still have use for her. Zhang Yi stared at the woman on the ground and a relaxed smile lifted the corner of his mouth. With her here, Phoenix Ren would be a piece of cake. Mayumi Takeuchi was too weak to even muster the energy to speak. She was already frail, so how could she possibly withstand Yi's punch? Xinxin, give her an arrow. Zhang Yi said. Yang Xinxin understood, and the angel of lust shot an arrow of lust at her. This made the woman her slave. Now, tell me everything you know about Phoenix Ren. What exactly do I have to do to kill him? Yang Xinxin leaned down and looked at Mayumi Takeuchi. A pink mist rose in Mayumi Takeuchi's eyes. In her eyes, Yang Xinxin became the only person in the world she could trust and rely on. She would even give up her life for her. He cannot be killed. Even if there's only a drop of blood, he can regenerate. To kill him, you have to drain all his essence. But it would take at least 10,000 deaths to kill him. This statement silenced everyone. Kill Phoenix Ren 10,000 times? Zhang Yi's spatial ability was temporarily unable to be used, and no one else could kill Phoenix Ren even once. Besides this, is there any other way? Yang Xinxin calmly asked. Yes. Let him kill himself. Mayumi Takeuchi said seriously. The only one who can destroy him is himself. Fatty Su furiously pulled his hair. Isn't this nonsense? He's not sick, why would he kill himself? Zhang Yi slowly got up, he threw away the cigarette butt in his hand and stamped it out. I understand. Let's do it. Everyone looked at Zhang Yi in surprise. Captain, do you have an idea? It's pretty much it, it's worth a try. Zhang Yi looked at Mayumi Takeuchi and smiled, if we can control her, we'll have already won half the battle. In the middle of the battlefield, Phoenix Ren was putting the Tengu squad under immense pressure. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 2 people. If it wasn't for Bai Li Changqing and Liang Yu blocking his way with their lives, none of the others would have been able to survive his attack. But in the blink of an eye, Phoenix Ren suddenly felt a marked change in his field of vision. Something had been stripped away from his body. He froze for a moment before realizing that he could no longer see the future. Huh? What's going on? Why can't I see clearly where they're going to attack from? It's as if there's something very important that I've forgotten. Phoenix Ren pondered for a long time before he realized what he had forgotten. He had a partner before, whose name seemed to be Takeuchi. Mayumi, was it? Phoenix Ren. A somewhat familiar voice came from the air, attracting Phoenix Ren's attention. He looked up and saw a face he hated. Zhang Yi. Phoenix Ren's expression became hideous, and he let out a roar as he looked up at the sky. Then he bent slightly, gathered his strength, and soared up like a cannonball. Zhang Yi quickly dodged in the air with his flying device. Then he raised the thunder strike in his hand and aimed at Phoenix Ren. With this, do you think you can kill me? Phoenix Ren sneered, as Zhang Yi's bullets could not catch up to his movements. After landing, he got up again, determined to kill Zhang Yi. But after a deafening gunshot swept through the air, a huge force pierced through Phoenix Ren's body, and he fell to the ground. Before he died, he still couldn't figure out how Zhang Yi had hit him. Zhang Yi stood in the air, with streaks of bloody color flowing over his body. Mayumi Takeuchi's was now empowering him. He could see 5 seconds into the future of Phoenix Ren, and thus judge his position in advance to attack. Phoenix Ren was dead, his body burning rapidly in preparation for the next regeneration. The members of the Tengu squad seized this opportunity to rush forward quickly, and then took out a special jet gun from their bodies. Streaks of white smoke began to jet at his corpse. That was liquid nitrogen, which could quickly lower the temperature to more than -100 degrees Celsius and even freeze cells. This was the method the Tengu squad had come up with to deal with Phoenix Rin. By freezing his cells, they might be able to keep him on the border between life and death and prevent him from being resurrected. Under the cooling effect of the large amount of liquid nitrogen, Phoenix Ren's body was frozen into a white ice sculpture.